The Steve Dangle Podcast with your hosts, Steve Dangle, Adam Wilde, and Jesse Blake.
CJ2, our show's back together. Yay! The whole family. How are you, CJ?
Good to be in the environment with you, gentlemen.
Man, so it's a long weekend Friday, and this is how you know CJ loves you. 2 days of free agency. We got the draft before that. We got the expansion draft before that draft. And he's making time for us on really what should be his first day off, truly. Like, this should be your first relaxed day in, 3 months? 4 months?
2 years, man.
2 years.
Yeah. Dude, what are you talking about? He was tweeting stuff at 11.
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to complain, but there's been very little time off since October or September 2019. This has been insane. Losing all of last offseason and then half of this one. This is a grumpy hockey world as a result.
Yeah. What is the running streak at? Because it's still going, right?
It's still going. I think it's 457 days. It's in the 450s for sure.
Damn. Wow. Good for you. What's the average distance that you do? Is it the same every day? Do you switch it up? What do you do?
So when I did the full year, I averaged 11K for 365 a day. I've definitely been running a little bit less since then. So it would be down, but it's still averaging over 10K a day. I try to basically do 10. Some days I feel frisky and go more, but then I've been kind of busy in July. So I've gone less a little bit more.
When you were in Tampa, did you run, you ran, I assume, before the games? Did you run by the arena, by the hotel? How did you do that?
Yeah, and it was awful, Jesse. Not to complain, but it was so hot and so muggy. I tried going at 6 a.m. I tried going at 6 p.m. There was no good time to run in Tampa. I mean,
it rains every day.
Hot.
It rains every day in the summer.
And you can't bring your phone because it could rain, biblical rain at any moment. And if you're somewhere where you can't hide, your phone's drowning. That was one of the toughest times because every day was so hot. But I got it done, and I also ran when it was a foot of snow a couple days too. So you just gotta, if you're gonna run every day, you can't be expecting good weather.
So let me ask you this: we're at the point now where we're just over a month away from players returning to camp, which is kind of crazy. It's what 5-6 weeks from right now, and normally the hockey world gets a 3-month breather or at least a 2-month breather, and then a way too long training camp. The season's starting a week later than it normally would. How's everybody going to handle that? How are the players going to handle that? How are the media going to handle that? Do you have a temperature check on what it's like inside the hockey world right now and how they're feeling about, again, it feels pretty compressed.
Yeah, there's a lot of burnt out people. I mean more behind the scenes. I'm not saying the players aren't, but I haven't heard that from any players. But, this has been tough on everyone. I think every industry, you'd probably find something similar if you we're talking right now. This has been a difficult stretch. I think this was a difficult season on teams, definitely on players. Some of the restrictions, not playing in front of fans again, just, what a couple years this will have been. I think that where there's hope, Adam, is that, we're going to probably have fans in most of the buildings, if not all of them, come October. It's going to look closer to normal. The schedule is going to be killer, though. I mean, it looks like they're going to Beijing to the Olympics, and so that means more games compressed into a period of time here. They're still going to have an all-star game in Vegas before that. Oh. So there's just fewer days. It's just a lot of games in fewer days. People might laugh because it's 186, day, give or take, regular season. But every day you carve out, if there's a 3-day all-star break, you start to do the math. It just compresses things a little bit more. So it's going to be a tough year, but I hope it's an exciting year with a new team in Seattle, with fans back. And I mean, I've never seen off season like this. I'm sure we'll get into this, but I can't remember who plays for what teams already. It's just been a tidal wave of transactions, trades, buyouts, what have you. And then the signings these past few days, it could make for a pretty exciting year, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Just that all the change that's happened around the league.
Well, so what's thrown you off the most or surprised you the most then? What has made this offseason the most unique to you?
I'd say the sheer number of moves, the trades too, like there's always trade rumors around the draft because teams are starting to test the market, but there was a lot of deals, right? I mean, a lot of players actually got traded. And we're still waiting on Jack Eichel trade among others. So I think there still will be more between now and mid-September when training camps open. That's probably been the biggest thing. When it comes to these last few days, I've been surprised at some of the contracts. Obviously, it was a really good free agency to be a defenseman of any caliber. I think the third pairing guys got paid more than I thought. We've seen some of the high end guys probably get a little bit more money than I would have guessed. And, basically all the restraint we saw in October 2020, where it looked like free agency might be changing because a lot of players did get squeezed there. It went out the window, in these last few days. And that's, it's fun, right? It's not my money. It's not your money. We might question the sort of business decisions here, but I think it makes for a pretty fun and splashy offseason. And it's going to make sure that there's buyout waivers in coming years, because I can guarantee you some of the contracts we've just seen signed will not get to their conclusion. There's just no way with the money that was splashed around.
Well, it was a tweet from our buddy Justin Fisher who said there's a lot of GM signing "that's the next guy" problem contracts today. And it definitely seemed that way. But I specifically, when you talk about the squeeze last October, and then we'll get into this offseason, but one of the most interesting guys from last offseason, probably the most interesting, is Taylor Hall. And, it's basically been rumored, and I don't know whether this has ever been confirmed, that he had some sort of 7-year offer from somebody and had a pretty high dollar amount, higher than what he got in Boston, to re-sign. And that it just fell through. Like, there's been multiple outlets that have hinted at there might have been something else that, surprise, surprise, signing for a year in Buffalo wasn't his first choice. How do you think he feels about how things have gone? Like, he ended up on the Bruins, which is great, and it seems like he's found a good home there. But there's a good chance that he's put millions of dollars or left millions of dollars on the table. Do you think he looks at it that way? Do you think he cares? How would that group, the Ferris group, handle that, and how are they talking about that?
No, I don't think I think he's actually really unique. So I'm just getting a call here. I'm going to stop.
Okay.
I think he's really unique in terms of the free agents because he moved around, right, a bunch. Edmonton, New Jersey, Arizona, Buffalo, Boston. He didn't want to move anymore. And so I think that he would have got more than 4 years and $6 million average had he gone to the free agent market and been willing to move again. I think Taylor honestly wants to win. I know a lot of people say that, but he's made good money. He's had some big contracts. He's seen the other side of it, right? He hasn't really played in very many playoff games. And so, I think he's at the stage of his life and his career where he's focused on putting down some roots as much as you can as a pro athlete and trying to chase a cup. And so it went really well for him in Boston. I mean, everything that happened after that trade, he played great. We might quibble with the fact, like, I kind of see the Bruins as heading in the wrong direction, big picture. I'm not saying that next year they'll be a disaster by any stretch, but, I wonder about, how much longer Patrice Bergeron has left in his career. As we're talking right now, David Krejci still hasn't signed. I think he's, weighing his own future. Tuukka Rask had hip surgery. He doesn't have a contract. It just feels like a lot of what made that team great for 10 years, might be slipping through their fingers here. So I don't see him as a problem. If I actually want to hold someone up, though, as like a difference between October to now, I'm looking at Cody Ceci. And look, I know this guy gets kicked around a lot online. That's not my intent here. But last October, I think he waited 7 to 10 days to even get a contract at all in free agency. He signs a 1-year deal in Pittsburgh, a little bit over $1 million. And, this time around at 12:01, 1 minute into the thing, they're finalizing a 4-year deal, $3.25 million. I mean, that is the difference to me. It's players of his ilk that aren't the absolute best players available. Those guys got squeezed last year. They had to wait. They had to take 1-year deals, at lower money. And then it was back to the frenzy come July, late July. Players that are third pairing defensemen like he were, got term and money. Tucker Pullman, $10 million, 4 years in Vancouver. Like bless these guys. This is life-changing money. I'm not bemoaning that, but that's where the difference was to me is those kind of guys had leverage and got big paychecks in free agency in 2021.
Well, yeah, and it is interesting though, the lower end. I did want to ask too. I mean, there's so much that we need to get to with you. But
we got time, man. We got nothing but time. Don't rush.
Well, so I guess the instinct I think is to start with the Leafs, but we're not going to start with the Leafs. I think the biggest story for free agency, at least for me, and Steve and Jesse can be like, what the hell are you talking about, is what is going on with the Carolina Hurricanes. The Nedeljkovic trade, signing Freddie Anderson to they call it a short-term deal, but 3 years is a long time. And
2 years.
Or is it 2 years? Oh, was it 2 years? And then it was 3 for Antti Ranta, wasn't it? Was that 2 years as well? I think
that was two times
I think
2.
It's 2 years as
well.
So
regardless, it doesn't seem like they've saved a whole bunch of money in goaltending. Their final offer to Dougie Hamilton was, from what we've heard, Sarah Sivian said somewhere in the neighborhood of $6.2 million a season. David Pagnotta had it closer to $7 million, but it was well under what he was going to get paid. It seems, and the Tony DeAngelo signing as well. What is the goal here with Carolina? I wish I could ask the question better, but what are they working with an internal cap? I thought Tom Dundon was flush with cash here. I'm not really sure what's going on.
I think that the best way to put it is they don't spend money that they don't feel they have to spend. And, they make a lot of smart decisions as an organization. Like, I don't think anyone can get around that. If you look back at their trading history, like, they have consistently found value in trades, all the way back to getting like Teuvo Teravainen from Chicago when they were cap squeezed. I just think they've consistently, improved around the margins, and that's why they've become the team they have. I mean, obviously they have some special young players too, but they've been efficient. And so they approached their goaltending that Alex Nedeljkovic, I think there was still some concerns that, yes, he had a breakthrough season this year. I know he's trended in the right direction, former AHL goalie of the year, someone they know well. I think that they weren't ready to give him the big money. And so they're not afraid to trade someone like that, even though it opens them up, exposes them to criticism, second guessing, the potential of being wrong. I think that they're comfortable doing that. With Dougie Hamilton, I mean, they took the first salvo here was they said, hey, go talk to the whole league for 2 months, like ahead of free agency, because their bet or their calculation was that the market wouldn't be as good for him as maybe Dougie thought, and that there was a chance he would come back to Carolina. And I think, he was willing to. The money just was never going to be the kind of money he got in New Jersey. And so, I feel like we have to separate the Tony DeAngelo decision, because that really, there's a separate conversation there. There's nothing to do with hockey. But if we're just talking about the hockey side of their offseason, I think they believe that they can let players walk, that they will hold a certain line. They were only going to pay Rod Brindamore so much as head coach. He did come back. They've even done it with their broadcasters, right? They lost John Forsland, who's one of the best play-by-play guys in the game. He's in Seattle now. They do things their own way, and they're betting on their efficiency. And so I think it's that simple. Tom Dundon has shown he'll spend when there's a reason to. He matched the Aho offer sheet. They have a big decision right now on Svechnikov, who's a restricted free agent, but clearly is in line for a monster raise. They'll spend it where they can, because you're not replacing Svechnikov anywhere. But I think that they believe they can replace their goaltending, and they can even find ways around losing Dougie Hamilton that will cost them less money.
Mm-hmm. Well, CJ, we really appreciate your time, because the Svechnikov offer sheet has to be coming any moment now, right?
I don't think so. I think that's the beauty of matching the Aho offer sheet in a sense. Like when Montreal tabled the offer sheet to Sebastian Aho, they believed that Tom Dundon wouldn't match. Like they weren't doing that just to try to mess things up there. They thought that Carolina was a team that would be cheap and that they would just let him walk and take the draft pick compensation and move on. Obviously they matched within a day or even less, and kind of made a statement in doing so. And so I think that's going to scare teams off of doing a Svechnikov. I mean, I actually think if we're talking offer sheets, like it shouldn't be for the superstars necessarily, because I think teams more often than not will match on a superstar. It's for the second tier talent. A team like Tampa, has been both last offseason and this one, to me, more vulnerable, because you might give a guy like a $2 million contract in an offer sheet, which only costs a third-round pick, I believe. And Tampa might just be like, you know what, we can't keep him. Like, it's just the price. We're not able to hold on to him. Could be a superstar, but I wonder even about Carter Hart in Philadelphia. The Flyers have done a lot of spending. If you look at it right now, I don't have their Puckpedia or Cap Friendly page up right now, but I know they don't have a ton of money left for him. maybe you come for him, and he might be a superstar in the making, but he didn't have a superstar season. Like, I feel like we should be targeting maybe some of the less obvious names when it comes to offer sheets, but obviously teams, they don't believe in it. It hasn't proven to be a good way to get players out of other teams, and so everyone just doesn't bother.
Because they've done nothing and they're all out of ideas. Like, it's not like it happens all the time. It hasn't proven to be good because it hasn't happened. I mean,
right. And you got to compel a player to sign it, right?
Yeah.
That is the flip side. Like last year, if I'm remembering Tampa right, they had to sign Sergachev, they had to sign Chernak, they had to sign
Cirelli
as well, right? So they had all these RFAs, plus they had their own tricky cap situation. Like, you have to convince those guys coming off a Stanley Cup to sign an offer sheet with you and to leave Tampa, which, let's face it, objectively is one of the best situations you could be playing in the NHL. Just lifestyle, tax, weather, great team, great organization, great owner. There's almost nothing not to like about being a Tampa Bay Lightning, other than the fact some guys can't get fair market value just because of their cap situation. But anyway, yeah, I do think we're going to see it, though. Like, there's like this much hope in me that we're going to start to see less true hockey people running teams. We're starting to see that in a sense. Like, the hockey isn't catching up fully to the other sports, but we've seen this, in baseball. You got like NASA engineers running teams and stuff. I think that's going to come to hockey, and I think that those type of people will identify market inefficiencies and will maybe make offer sheets more of a thing than they have been in the last 10 years or so.
Going around the league here with a couple other teams who have made some signings, what do you make of the situation going on in Vegas right now, where in the last, 7 months, they've lost Schmidt and they've lost Reeves and they lost Marc-Andre Fleury, and the players leaving there seem to have no good things to say about the franchise and how their time was spent there. Do you think there's a problem there with them having too much turnover in their players, and do you think it's a conversation amongst the guys?
Well, it's certainly a bit of a conversation around the league, and the organization makes no apologies for it. Like, they're trying to win a Stanley Cup, and it's a fine line, right? Because they've won so many games. They keep building a great team. They've been aggressive through trades and in free agency. Like, I feel like if you're a fan, other than the fact you might have bought a jersey of a player who's now playing somewhere else and you're disappointed to see your favorite guy go, this is sort of what fans demand of their teams, is they're literally turning over every stone they can to win a Stanley Cup. But there's a price to that, right? I mean, first of all, there's no guarantees you win a cup, of course. But secondly, is there is a reputational factor there. But, I think it's a reasonable bet that guys are going to want to keep playing in Vegas. It actually reminds me of Tampa. Has all the same benefits. It's a great place to live, a great place to be, for your family in terms of weather and the school setup, and the tax situation's favorable. The team's great. It's an awesome building, great fan base. I mean, I think guys are still going to want to play there. But, they're pushing the envelope in some ways. The Fleury situation too, though, maybe hasn't been discussed in its full nuance either. I mean, a decision was made where, Alan Walsh's agent tweeted out the picture on Twitter when he wasn't starting the games in the bubble in 2020. And the organization didn't forget that. I'm not here to say who's right and wrong in that situation, but it's not fair to say that there weren't some shots lobbied back and forth. And, it was evidence to me of two sides. I think Marc-Andre Fleury clearly loved playing in Vegas. I think he performed great for the team by and large, but, it wasn't a completely happy marriage. So, I'm not surprised that they chose Robin Lehner over Fleury. Also, just he's younger and he signed for more years at a lower cap hit. And so, part of that is just projecting out a sort of medium term for their roster building. So, there's a fine line there, but you're right. Clearly there's not a lot of loyalty, but this is pro sports. And I think there's not a lot of loyalty in a lot of places, if we're being honest about the way decisions are made and some of the things that go down. Look at Minnesota, with Ryan Suter. And, in particular, I think Zach Parise was probably welcoming the change of locale, whereas Ryan Suter didn't really want to be bought out. I mean, it doesn't end too well for too many players in this league. I think that's just a fact.
To combine the two conversations there between Carolina and Vegas, there's a disconnect here that's not making sense to me. Right. About the market, they were spending, they being teams, spending money like drunken sailors in free agency, but the goalie market was so poor for some reason that Nedeljkovic, who was nominated for the Calder, was traded for a third-round pick, and Marc-Andre Fleury, the reigning Vezina winner, was traded for a fifth-round pick from 2018. Did either of those things shock you? Because it's obvious that cap space is valued there. That's the message being sent from those deals, but it's completely different from the message being sent in free agency.
Yeah, there's a dissonance. You're right. It's just like it doesn't all completely add up. And frankly, those trades were made leading into free agency so that they had more cap space to spend on free agents, which is, kind of strange. I mean, look, the Vegas situation, there's not many goalies making $7 million, right, as Marc-Andre Fleury is. Now, he's performing up to being among the best goalies in the league. Even if you don't think he should have won the Vezina, he was without question a top 5 goaltender last year, top 3 goaltender, whatever. Like even if you want to quibble with the way the GMs voted for that award, he was tremendous last season, and has been tremendous for the bulk of 16, 17 years in the NHL. But very few teams could take on a $7 million goalie or were willing to. Vegas didn't want to eat money on him because obviously they still have their own cap. Like even as of now, they might be above the cap. So they still have to make further moves even after trading away Ryan Reeves for just a draft pick. So, that one makes sense. The Nedeljkovic one is interesting because that's more of a philosophical decision. Like with Vegas, I think we can all kind of understand it even as much as Fleury was the face of the franchise. Like, as I mentioned, it wasn't the smoothest relationship behind the scenes. He is 36, 37. $7 million is a lot to pay for a goalie. And so I can see where they're just like addition by subtraction for them in that regard. With Carolina, what was Nedeljkovic's contract? $3.2 million in Detroit, something like that?
That was three flat.
Three flat.
There you go. So that's a decision not to pay him $3 million. And he's 25. And he's just come off a season where, he ended up becoming their starter. He also passed through waivers quite recently, too. So, I mean, look,
that's
it's
true.
Goaltending is voodoo a little bit. If I remember correctly, they claimed Anton Forsberg from Edmonton in training camp because they were putting Nedeljkovic on waivers the next day and they wanted to have a third goalie. So he started last season as Carolina's third goalie. And so, I just think that they don't fully believe in him as a starter, like a guy that they could count on to play 50 games next year for a team trying to win the Stanley Cup. It might be a bad bet, but the flip side of that, of course, is they've had him in their organization for years. They know him probably better than anybody, and that's the decision they made. So I was surprised in a little bit, but also I kept hearing they weren't going to give him a qualifying offer. They were just going to let him become a free agent because they were worried about his arbitration case. So, yeah, but I can't explain how all this fits together because I think the league's like that's sort of what you're asking, right? I think the league has been drunk for 10 days, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it's like on one hand, we saw more trades for nothing than I've ever seen. Like more just like we're setting this guy. We're not even going to call it future considerations. It's just like we're trading this guy and draft picks, and that's it.
Yeah,
for nothing, which I didn't think you were allowed to do.
Yeah,
but I guess you are.
Right, for nothing. So that became like a trend. There was a lot of buyouts, and then there was a lot of big contracts handed out. So like it doesn't all really add up, but as I say, I think it makes it fun. I mean, it was pure chaos these last 10 days.
206 NHL players signed a new deal in the last 3 days.
Oh my
wow. Wow.
Yeah. Or at least extension or update. That's from Cap Friendly.
That's what
the signings in the last 3 days is 206 contracts.
Man.
Well, I mean, if you do 25 players per team, and now we have 32 teams, right? That takes you to, my math will not be quick enough on this, but 800 players, basically 900 players at the most. Like that's a huge number, a quarter of the league.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, Chris, let me ask you this: you had to cover it up close, so sometimes you can get too close to the painting to see the full picture. You've had a couple days to digest because you were I saw you and Frank and Elliot just churning it out on free agency. And it was funny because I was like, really, they're going to go to the Jays game now? Because this is the best free agency we've ever seen. So thankfully I have my 360 subscription. Oh, can't hear you. We've lost you.
That's probably best. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah. What did you say?
I said, are you trying to walk me into saying something that I'm going to regret about?
No, not at all. Not at all. No, I was surprised. I'm like, I know live sports trumps all, but like, this is the best free agency we've ever seen. Now, based on what you've seen, and you've had a few days to digest, which is my original point, who's the big winner? Who's the big loser? Who did the best? And I'm not just talking about free agency. It can be how they handled Seattle, how they handled the draft. The last, since the Stanley Cup was awarded, what's the team for you that you've been like, I'm really impressed?
So I think the teams that didn't spend like crazy are kind of my winners.
Toronto Maple Leafs.
Let's save that one.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But so okay, this actually is a little bit invalidating my point. I liked what New Jersey did. Like, they spent big on Dougie Hamilton, but I love that addition for them. They had Luke Hughes in the draft. Like, I think that's an organization that's going to take a step forward. Now, they've been a long way away the last couple of years from being competitive. So, of course, they're still, I'm not saying they're going to win a Stanley Cup, but like, I think this has been a good 2 weeks for the New Jersey Devils. I think it's been a good couple of weeks for the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I'm sure we can get into the Werenski contract a little on the high side, but like what they got back and trading some players away and the way they position themselves moving forward and keeping Werenski for all of his 20s. Like, I think the key distinction everyone on Twitter missed is they literally just bought his best years and didn't buy any crappy years on the end. And so, yes, the contract's high, but they have him
Cale Makar.
Okay, but Cale Makar is younger, and so Colorado was buying more of his restricted free agent years. What the implication there is that his UFA years are worth much more than 9.5.
Right.
And so I'm not saying I didn't like the Cale Makar contract, but like, I just think the distinction people miss is like, literally they just bought his 20s. Like, that's when you want to have players locked up. Yes, it's a little bit high, but they kept another star from leaving their city at a time when I think they have to push back against that narrative and that idea. And to me, they didn't overcommit themselves to the wrong years of his career. Like, if they paid him that till he was 35, I'd be like, disaster. Like, that's trouble. But this, I think it's a smart decision for them. So I like them. I actually like what Arizona did, quite honestly. They took advantage of this weird period in time where so many teams are cap squeezed, and they got 2 first-round picks and 5 second-rounders plus a whole bunch of other crap. I know they're going to be terrible. 5 second-rounders in the 2022 draft.
That's great.
Arizona. Sorry, go ahead.
Let's face it, the tear down part of a rebuild is the easy part. Like, I get this because they have to make good decisions with those picks and all that. But like, they weaponize their cap space the way, like, I think any team that's been adrift, like, that's what you should want your franchise to do, because they still have players they can trade out. And I think they're still going to sign free agents on 1-year deals that they're trading at the deadline. Like, they have restocked the cupboards, and they were aggressive at this great moment in time when no one else was doing it. I think it's a good 2 weeks for them. Now they have to make a lot of good decisions, whether this works or not. And let's face it, that organization's had a lot of stops and starts, but I like their offseason. Who didn't I like? Well, anyone that was spending drunken sailorly is likely in for some trouble. So I
care to name names?
Well, I just got to think through it in my brain. I wonder about Edmonton. I like the Hyman signing. I really do. Even at the number, even at the term, I think it's a smart bet for them. I think in a lot of ways, Zach was underappreciated. I know by not you guys as Leafs fans, but maybe in Toronto in general, he was always like the fifth fiddle, right? Because there was all these shiny toys around him. And I think in some ways, maybe that led to him being a little underappreciated for what he does. But I worry about where their defense is at after losing Adam Larsson. Their right side now, they have Bouchard, who's very young, Barry and Ceci. I could just see that not going well. And then they didn't upgrade in net. And I know that they were right in on Darcy Kemper up until the end. But look, they had a lot of holes to fill, and that's tough to do in free agency without making mistakes. But I just wonder, they definitely improved their forward group in my eyes, and that was badly needed. Even Derek Ryan, it's going to be a better top 12, but everything after that, I was like, ooh, this might not age well.
I want to support a couple of your points, and then I have a couple questions, because Arizona has 4 firsts over the next 3 drafts, 8 seconds, and 5 thirds. I've I've never seen 5 picks in the same round on Cap Friendly. I've never seen them have to stack. They have to stack the way it's displayed. It's unbelievable.
That's going to go up too because of the trade deadline. They'll dump a few more.
Yeah, probably. That's
so sure. Like 100% for sure. They're going to sign guys that can be flipped. They're still going to try to trade Phil Kessel. I think Christian Dvorak might be traded. Like anything that isn't nailed down there is in play.
It's gone.
But you know what? If you've been as lost as they've been, like I think it's the only way to attack it. Like I think, like I'm making some light of it, but this is actually a plan, right? Yeah. This is the start of a plan. And
they're bad on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, and they got Shane Wright maybe coming. It's like if they get the first overall pick next year and they get Shane Wright and they make good drafting, like we're going to be talking about them totally differently in a year and a half's time, right? Mm-hmm. Like this is how you do it. Like get aggressive, lean into being crappy, and maximize everything you can at a time when the whole league is looking for cap space. Like they did an awesome job in that OEL trade, I think, like from their perspective. I get why Vancouver did it. Like they unloaded most of his contract. Like they're in such a better position today than they were at the start of, the month.
Yeah. And worker bees like Roussel and Beagle, you're telling me no one's going to want them at the deadline? Shut up. Someone's going to give them picks for that. And all those picks, I mean, they're going to have to support Austin Matthews somehow.
Yeah.
Your Zach Werenski.
Whoa.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think
they're preparing. I think, they're going to make a run at him for sure.
Yeah. Your Zach Werenski point reminds me so much of Thomas Vanek years ago with Buffalo because they lost Briere and they lost Drury and they put their foot down and they said, no, not this one. We're keeping this guy.
Except Vanek signed an offer sheet with Edmonton and they had to match it.
Oh,
that's right. And it was absurd money at the time. And they would have got 4 firsts and they would have been Edmonton around the 2010s firsts.
Ooh. You should do like a trade tree version of that, Steve. Like look at what that would have looked like.
What it would have looked. Oh, it would have been like, I got to go back. I think I did it once. It would have been like Jordan Eberle, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins.
Wow.
Like it would have been Taylor Hall. It would have been
Yakupov, I think.
It might have been Yakupov. It would have been unbelievable.
I want to know the alternate universe of what could have been for Buffalo if they'd let him walk.
Yeah. You got it, buddy. I'm on it.
That's great. Chris, any other teams? Sorry, Steve. I just was going to ask if there's any other teams, but keep going with your point if you need to.
The last thing I was going to say is Koskinen getting traded is like it's a done deal, right?
Is it?
To Buffalo? Like it just seems like just kiss already. Like it seems like the perfect match.
I think that ship has sailed. Actually,
really?
Yeah, I think the plan is to start the season with Smith and Koskinen as their 2 goalies.
Okay, Buffalo's going to start with Dell and Anderson.
Yeah, and something else might shake free, but I think that's. I mean, Dell got a 2-way deal, so he's their 3rd goalie. I think. I mean, I don't know.
Anderson Tokarski?
I'm not sure. I'm not comfortable saying anything is done, but there was some talk with Edmonton and Buffalo on Koskinen. I think that was all tied though if they were going to be able to get Kemper and they were going to trade Koskinen in a separate trade. But now that didn't happen, it's my understanding Edmonton's just going to roll with Koskinen and Smith to start the year and make adjustments as needed.
Do they lose Stalock on waivers when the year starts? Because they have 3 goalies right now.
They probably, who knows? You can usually get goalies through if you do it right. Mm-hmm. I think the strategy is to put your 3rd goalie on waivers early in camp before teams have made decisions or allowed their guys to get injured in a preseason game or whatever. Obviously, you're rolling the dice by that, but there's a world he gets through. I mean, Nedeljkovic got through last year. And look, like how many teams could have used that claim a little bit more effectively? So I think he could get through, but it all depends on timing.
Who else didn't you like?
Jog my memory. Who made really obviously?
Did you like
decisions?
Vancouver flipping all of their signings from last offseason this season?
I did because I think it was a realistic way to approach their problem. Like they backed themselves into a corner with a lot of bad decisions. They've delayed the pain here. Like I think they're definitely a better team next season. Doesn't mean they're going to have cap issues again in future years, but if you're talking about GMs that aren't guaranteed to be there long term, I think Jim Venn falls into that category. They left themselves room now to get Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson signed. Like I like their offseason from where they were to where they got to. I like it, but they really just delayed the pain. It's like me It's like, young CJ procrastinating every work as their school assignment, like always perpetually. Like, I feel like they're procrastinating the really bad years, but at least it's not going to be next season. It's going to be 3 years from now or whatever.
I think there are a couple teams that spent wildly, but there's a team that I've been particularly hard on, and you're wearing their t-shirt, the Preds. Like, did you see anything that makes you believe they're going in one direction or the other, or are they a first and out team again?
Well, I mean, I think what they did leading up to free agency leads me to believe they're moving into a rebuild, honestly. I mean, trading Ellis, trading Arvidsson, those are key pieces from the year. This was a media giveaway, the 2017 Stanley Cup final, was it, or 2016?
Yeah, 16. We were all there.
17.
16 was San Jose.
I was at both.
I was at
shit, Adam.
Can I tell you a story about this t-shirt?
Yeah, please.
So they gave us this to all there was a selection of Nashville related t-shirts they gave to the media during that cup final. And obviously in public, I don't wear team gear really for any team other than the Blue Jays or something. And so that summer, I think it was just a bad laundry day. And so I throw it on one day. It's middle of the summer, whatever. And I walk out of my apartment and go 2 blocks, and I bump into Frankie Corrado. And Frankie was on Pittsburgh as a black ace, in that cup final. Mm-hmm. And so it's just 3 weeks after the cup final ends, and I'm walking around, wearing a t-shirt for the team that he just played in the cup final. It just was funny. Frankie's a good natured guy, but it's that's kind of awkward. And then literally the next time I wore it was a month later, probably the same situation. And I walk out, no joke, one more block further from my house, 3 blocks instead of 2. And I walked by PK Subban on the street. Now, I didn't talk to PK. I don't know if he saw it. I don't even know if he would recognize me or know who I am or anything. But I'm I'm never wearing this t-shirt in public again, because every time I do, I'm seeing a member of the Predators or someone who just played them in the cup final wearing it. So maybe I'll regret wearing it on this podcast. But
well, you never know who's watching, which from what we've heard anyway, it's more than we thought.
Right.
Yeah? Did you guys get in trouble?
Anyway,
no. I have 2 more teams I wanted to ask about.
This is a house of honesty, you guys. What's going on? What are you holding back on me for?
You just hear things from time to time. That's all. Okay. Jesse, go ahead.
So 2 more teams I wanted to ask about. One was Philly. What do you think of moving out Gostisbehere, bringing in Ristolainen and Martin Jones and Ryan Ellis? Yeah, what do you think of their moves, especially on the D-core?
Oh man, it's a hard one to make. I get why they looked at last season, or we got to change the core here, right? They trade away Voracek too and get Cam Atkinson. Something wasn't right there after they had a pretty good run in the Toronto bubble and last summer. So I like that approach. I actually don't hate what they did. The Ristolainen, what they paid was probably more than I'd be comfortable paying, but other teams were in the right market there. I think that they could emerge from this better, but it's kind of a big pile of I don't know for me, to be honest. I don't think it's blatantly horrible, but it's also some strange decisions. And I think it highlights maybe some of the challenges of trying to get better in free agency is that you gotta take some big swings at players you're not sure about. And so that's why I do think some of the teams that were in a position not to have to be getting too aggressive right now, as much as that is boring or less interesting, I think that in some ways, you might be better off because you're more likely to make a mistake if you're out here, swinging the bat as hard as they were.
Mm-hmm. And my last team. Go ahead.
Sure.
I was going to say my last team was Calgary. What do you think?
Yes. Tell me about Calgary.
They bring in Chris Tanev and Blake
Markstrom.
Coleman. And Markstrom is really their only goalie right now, and then they lose their captain. And we expected wholesale changes in Calgary, and that doesn't seem to be happening.
I think they changed more than you think.
Yeah,
they did change a fair bit, but what's interesting is it sounds like they're talking with Johnny Gaudreau about an extension, not so much exploring the trade market on them. I mean, I think the issue they have is their best players that they might look to trade away are not at their highest value point. even if they were to entertain, I know there's lots of smoke around Matthew Tkachuk. Like, he's not coming off his best season, so it's a somewhat depressed asset in his case. I think clearly Sean Monahan and Johnny Gaudreau are, from where they were a few years ago, they're just getting older and they've been less productive. Things haven't gone well for the team in this last year, so it's probably harder to get good value for them. I think that they're in a really difficult spot as an organization, because they haven't fully embraced sort of like a rebuild type of situation, and it's getting there at some point, right? Like, I think that's the question for me with Calgary is like, okay, we know you're going to have to rebuild. Like, how long can you delay the inevitable or the pain? But when you're signing, they signed Markstrom, was it 6 years last summer, and then 6 years for Coleman. Like, they're not behaving like a team that's, entertaining a rebuild anytime soon. I could still see them being better. Like, I picked them to win the North Division, which shows you how much you should pay attention to my preseason predictions. But I thought the last couple of years prior to this one, they were the best team in Canada that didn't get enough goaltending. Then they got Markstrom. I was just thinking they're poised to do something. Like, I find that they're very confounding, but I still think they should be decent. And they're in a division, let's call it as it is. Like, that Pacific Division, I think it's right there for almost anybody. I mean, Vegas with the powerhouse in it, but I think if you're in the Pacific, it makes sense to be really aggressive because you could go on a run and win 2 rounds.
I don't think you should feel bad about the Calgary pick, because to me that was their standings results versus their roster had the biggest discrepancy. Like, they shouldn't have been as bad as they were. And when it comes to the Gaudreau thing, it reminds me of what we said about Line A preseason. Either trade him now or make a commitment to him. Like, I've been on the trade Johnny Gaudreau train for a while, but a commitment to him is at very least a decision. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Right. But it's that very trade clause is kicked in. They had the chance, and now I believe that's kicked in now, and so it's going to be a lot harder to trade him.
So make a decision. If the decision is extend him, great. At least you've made a choice.
Right, and I think what's interesting with him is there's always been this notion that he wanted to get back to the New Jersey, Philly area where he grew up. Is he willing to commit to them? And I don't have that answer. I mean, obviously they're having trade contract discussions, so he's at least willing to entertain his options there and see what the market might be. But I think both sides kind of have to make a commitment or not in this one. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, because Johnny's pushed back about that, but it's just been loud enough that there must be somebody saying that, or enough people are saying that there might be some element of truth. And I don't think we can blame them, just as, when players have come back and played in Toronto in their hometown or whatever. Like, I think it's totally fine when you have that ability in free agency to make a decision for your family that might be different than in the organization's best interest. But I'm just curious to see how that works out, because both sides kind of have a decision in my eyes.
The another one we mentioned, and I swear all the Leaf fans were like, come on, talk about the Leafs. We'll get to them. The Florida Panthers have made.
You just want to make sure they listen to the whole pod.
Yeah, that's what it was. We're gonna slice it up and put it up anyway, so they'll see it. But my thing is that the Florida Panthers made some perplexing moves, and they had found money with Sam Bennett, and then they re-signed.
And then they gave it to him.
They gave him a lot of money, and then
hey Sam, we found this money.
A year out from having to give Carter Verhaeghe money, because I believe he's got another year left at $1 million, they were like, we're going to extend you and give you $4 million per season. Florida's wild with the contracts. They won't sign the goalie that did well for them last year. I know they've got Spencer Knight, but he's sort of an unknown quantity. What is the plan there? Is it a safe bet? Carter Verhaeghe at $4 million? Are we sure?
It's not a safe bet, but I don't mind that one so much. I mean, to me, that's rewarding a player. Like, they signed him to a very value deal. He was delivered on it. He was kind of overlooked a little bit in Tampa. Like, I like rewarding your own guy, because I do think that in this case, he's likely to live up to it. I mean, there's enough of a sample there that I think it's pretty clear he's an offensive driver. And if he's playing in offensive minutes with certain line mates, I mean, I think he's going to produce. And that's what we saw this year. So that one doesn't bother me. I think the danger with the Sam Bennett contract is, he had like 108 PDO or something after the trade. Like, you didn't see, he had a tough season in Calgary. And then, there might've been some shooting luck just involved in the small sample you saw him with the Panthers. Mm-hmm. And so you might be paying for that high performance, but I actually don't mind Florida's offseason. Like, they managed to move Anton Strahlman out. Like, I think Bill Zito has shown himself in a year as a GM to be pretty effective. He's certainly unafraid to take a big swing. And really the biggest question for their organization now is what happens with Barkov, right? He's 1 year out from unrestricted free agency. And obviously, based on the kind of player he is, he's in a position for a huge deal. I'm curious to see how that's approached, if they're able to get him to get on a long-term commitment, if they can afford that, how that looks. But I see the Panthers as like a real rising team in the league. And, even moving on from Keith Yandel, I like their blue line. The goaltending, Bob has not lived up to his contract, obviously, but I think that's a really good team. And it's probably one of the reasons Leaf fans out there should be most nervous, is that the Atlantic is getting better around them, and they are treading water at the moment. So I don't hate their offseason, but I agree. Those contracts the contract of Bennett might be a little aggressive, but to me, it's still a movable deal. And they didn't pay him so much that there's an implied no move clause there. Like I still think that they can trade him if that doesn't work out.
Just want to take a break to tell you this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Check out betterhelp.com/SDP. Now, life is full of stressors. It doesn't matter who you are, what you have. Life is stressful, and you're going to have things in your life that are going to throw you off. Maybe feeling down, maybe feeling out, maybe a little depressed. Maybe that you're like at a total loss. And if your stress is high, your temper is shorter than usual, even if you're starting to feel kind of the strain of relationships, you probably need a chance to unload to a third party. Well, unload that stress, get it out, talk to somebody who's completely unbiased about your life, somebody who isn't going to judge you or take sides on anything. And when there are things you can't tell anyone, this is a person that you can tell. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't feel comfortable. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Unload the stressors and get unbiased feedback that you'd be pretty surprised at what you might gain from it. See if it's for you. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and the code is SDP. Listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/SDP. That's BETTERHELP.com/SDP. With summer in full swing, we're swapping out the winter warmth for easy, breezy comfort for the season with award-winning sheets from Brooklinen. You should check it out. It's one of the coolest things about Brooklinen is you've got so many options. They're famous for their luxe sateen and classic percale sheets, but also they've got some amazing linen and some even more amazing cashmere sheets, because you should treat yourself. And when it comes to prints and colors, they whip up new styles every season, like the ochre colorway in linen and banana stripe pattern in classic and luxe. Those are my personal favorites, just in time for summer. Brooklinen sheets also pair perfectly with the rest of their bedding essentials like cozy comforters, pillows, and duvet covers. And since everyone knows summer comfort goes way beyond the bedroom, they've also got some seriously great bath towels, robes, and beach towels too. All this high-quality, luxury-grade comfort without the luxury price tags. It's no wonder why Brooklinen's got over 75,000 five-star reviews and counting. Hopefully yours to be included. So get ready for summer. Go to brooklinen.com and use the promo code SDP to get $20 off with a minimum purchase of $100. That's BROOKLINEN.com/SDP for $20 off a minimum purchase of $100. That's brooklinen.com/SDP. If dreams of vacations and enjoying the fun of life are turning back into reality for you, don't let concerns about financial setbacks keep you from saying yes. Credit Karma helps keep your financial goals in check so you won't have to hit pause on the good times ahead. So here's the deal. Credit Karma's got game-changing technology that shows you tailored offers for credit cards and personal loans that you're more likely to be approved for, so you can apply with more confidence. They'll use your credit and other financial information to show you custom recommendations. And whether you want cash back or travel rewards or you to consolidate debt, Credit Karma can help you find the offers that fit your goals. And with a selection of options and approval odds, you have the power to make informed decisions. It's Credit Karma. Apply with confidence. Go to creditkarma.com/podcast to learn more and find offers tailored just for you. That's creditkarma.com/podcast, PODCAST, or you can see your offers at the Credit Karma app. So just download that. Apply with confidence today. Go to creditkarma.com/podcast or the Credit Karma app. Okay, so I guess we got to ask the question, we criticize Vegas for turning over every stone. Let's move to a team that will turn over no stones. We're not going to look at this. We're not going to change anything. We're going to throw a few more pebbles in the pond, and that's what we're going to do. it has set up the Leafs to be one of the more interesting stories this year. Not that they're not already, but this doubling down on a team that has failed for 5 straight years in the first round or the play-in round. What did you think of their offseason so far? I mean, it's obviously, there's still a couple months before the season starts again, so we're going to keep that in mind. Yeah. But what you've seen so far, CJ, are you impressed?
I'm impressed with their conviction.
That's a choice.
That's a choice.
It is a choice, and it's what they said they were going to do 2 days after the season. And every time Kyle Dubas hasn't been in front of a hot mic since, and he has been a man of his word. So I think that I go back, and I know everyone's sort of bored of this because it's almost played out, but I go back to what Brendan Shanahan said in 2015. The problem in Toronto isn't to have the plan. The problem is to stick to the plan, and they are sticking to their plan. And I agree with that approach. Now, I think we can get into the weeds here, and I'm fully willing to, on whether they've made the right plan and whether they bet on the right guys and all that stuff. Like, I think that there's a fair conversation to be had there. But if I listen to even just my buddies or the people that always want to offer me their opinion on the Leafs, like every day it's like, you got to trade this guy, you got to do this. And that would be no way to operate any team if you're just a prisoner of the moment and you're reacting emotionally. And so I do think it's been a good offseason in terms of laying out what their vision is and delivering on it. And so nothing has surprised me. Like, I think, because, I've been saying that Hyman was going to go. I was saying that right after the season, and he went. And I kept saying, like, they're not in, like, people were trying to, like, link them to all these guys, Landeskog and all this stuff. And I was like, that's just not happening. Like, I don't know what universe those rumors are coming from, other than maybe an agent wanting the Toronto, to get a little bit of player out of his guy.
Or Saravalli saying that D'Angelo might be a fit in Toronto.
Did he say
that? Was surprising. Yeah, apparently he did.
On his podcast.
Yeah, it was like,
people sent us that,
and we were kind of like, I don't.
That doesn't line up with what I know and what I've heard, but I never heard that. If that was the case,
he might have just been spitballing,
right?
Yeah,
because they always need a right-handed guy, but right-handed.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Handedness. That's what I was talking about. What?
Oh, Steve,
I was talking about handedness. Their power play was bad. Anyway.
So the Leafs.
Yes. Yeah. But I do think so. I think that there's something to be said for them sticking to the plan. And the only thing that I found interesting, and not to parse his words, because we need the GM to speak publicly, but Kyle Dubas did say, I think just before the entry draft when he spoke to reporters, for better or for worse, I'm sticking with, these are my guys, I believe in them. And yes, it's just 2 words, for worse, but it does imply that there is at least some doubt creeping in. And, I think that would be fully reasonable, rational. I think that that's why we've seen such an emotional response from people that love this team, like you guys, like Steve, is that there's now doubt there. And, they didn't go out and do anything big to, ease your concerns. And it's pretty clear if Kyle's ready to go down with the ship, if the ship's going to go down.
Maybe a smaller move. So they lose Bogosian, wants to go to Tampa where it's nice and they win, and also he didn't like the restrictions and all that. So they got Dermott in potentially that third pair right slot. But Eric Engels reported that Yanni Hakanpää got basically where did he say he signed in Dallas, right?
Yeah.
And they offered him $1.5 million per year, which is exactly Travis Dermott's cap hit. What's going on there? You think they end up moving this guy?
Travis?
Yeah.
Not at this point. I mean, maybe if they can find a replacement. I think, right now you've got Sandin, Liljegren, and Dermott essentially as the bottom, like the 5, 6, 7. It's not bad, but I also think they wouldn't want to make it any weaker because, there's going to be injuries and things like that, 82-game season. So, look, Dermott was exposed to Seattle and expansion. They are, even just by making that move, they were willing to lose him. His place here long-term is far from secure. But I don't think they're looking to move him. I still think he's good value at $1.5 million, which is probably how Kyle Dubas looks at it. So, it's a long way of saying he's not here 100% for sure, but I don't think they mind having him. And at that cap number, I think that's perfectly fine for him as a third pairing D.
Speaking of expansion, there were some things that we clearly agreed with the Leafs, some things that looked maybe dumb at the time and look pretty smart now. I think you were in the camp of, well, they just got Jared McCann. Surely they're not going to lose him. What was your reaction to that saga? And then afterward, I want to get into Justin Hall.
I didn't mind the move to get him and to insulate themselves. Like I'd always heard that Seattle was interested in Kerfoot. I think their interest was legitimate way back a long time ago. As much as I see like Steve Birch and lots of people out there saying like, there's no way you can protect Justin Hall and you can replace him so easily. Like, unless Yanni Hakanpää, for example, was coming here, which he wasn't. I mean, look, there's like 6 Finns in Dallas. I think he's very comfortable joining his countrymen there. Again, tax-free state. Like, there's lots of benefits to Dallas. I didn't see that many clear replacements for Justin Hall that went for less money than he makes in free agency. Hakanpää might be the start and end of the list. And so I think that they protected an asset that was going to be harder to replace, essentially. I don't think it's a statement that Hall is necessarily more valuable than McCann might be, but it's like, look, we're on day 3 for agency as we're recording this. There's still players out there that I know the Leafs are interested in that I think can fit into the kind of role that McCann would have played on this team. And so I didn't have any problem with it. I was just more surprised they didn't work out a side deal to ensure that Kerfoot was gone. That was always what I assumed. I assumed that there was going to be a side deal we hadn't heard about after that move, just because it kind of pointed to that. Turns out Seattle didn't make any side deals because they were asking so much of the teams. And so ultimately you give up a 7th round pick and Philip Hallander as a B-level prospect to protect that area. I think with hindsight, it's hard to really quibble. It's just a lot of people would rather McCann be here than Kerfoot, I think, among the fan base. But at least they didn't lose both of them.
Adam, do you have any questions about side deals?
Well, my opinion, Chris, is that because Seattle didn't get anybody across the line, that they asked too much and made a mistake in not reevaluating their price. And I'm not saying you sell low, but you should be weaponizing the cap space that they have. And maybe they probably still can. What have they got? 20 million left? But it seems as though you had the opportunity to gain those picks now and in the next draft, and they didn't do it. Is your sense of things that they really thought people would pay that price, or was the price set that way so that teams, like, they'd be shocked if any team actually paid it?
I think they more made comfort with the idea that they're trying to be really good in 3 or 4 years than next year.
So then why? Sorry,
you establish a high price, meaning it's sort of like, I'm not selling my house to you unless you pay me so much money that I have to. And so I think I know what you're thinking here is like, why I don't think they wanted to get into that game just yet of leveraging everything just to like get all these draft picks. Like, I think that they've much more valued protecting their cap space and getting the players that they wanted. And let's face it too, it was a totally different environment. And I'm not even talking about the pandemic and everything. It's just, I think other teams were way more skittish about making deals and trying to galaxy brain this thing. And so they were operating from a weak position that way. And I think that they were maybe hoping 1 or 2 teams would bend. But, if you just got into like, okay, you're not going to pay me a 1st for this guy, well, I'll just take a 6th. When if you establish the market at a 6th, I mean, what are 6th round picks, let's face it, are not worth very much. So, I find the strategy doesn't look as good coming out of the expansion draft as I thought it might, but I'm still hesitant to like rail on them because we've seen them make a couple subsequent trades. I still think they'll make more trades from their D pool here. And, having that cap space is going to mean something too. And so I don't hate their expansion draft. I'm just still not sure how it all, like why it went down as it did.
Mm-hmm.
They're almost too incomplete to evaluate. Like,
yeah.
But there are still some like Bayreuther, Quenville. Like, there's some really confusing picks.
But Bayreuther, the decision is basically they didn't want Max Domi, right? Like, right. Max Domi is the other player available. You have to pick a player from every team.
Yep.
By Bayreuther, they picked, so that was their pick, and then they just didn't sign him. And so that means that they didn't take on anyone from Columbus they didn't really want. And they obviously didn't want Max Domi at his cap number. And so I think that's how you have to evaluate all those decisions. Like, I think Vegas took the goalie JF Berube, I want to say, and didn't sign him, like essentially a net neutral pick. They took
that was a side deal though.
Right. But like the point is that, and they picked Connor Brickley from Carolina and didn't sign him. Like my point is, instead of taking someone from every team that you don't like, they just, in some cases, they basically punted on a team. Mm-hmm. And that was Quenneville. So I guess the question is, should they have taken Zadorov, right? Because he's since been traded to Calgary. And I think it was a 3rd-round pick they got, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was, I think it was the Leafs' 3rd-round pick.
So would it have been better? Yeah, for Riddick, that's right. So would it have been better to take a Zadorov and try to flip him for a 3rd yourself or not? Obviously, they took John Quenneville, who they're not signing. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that to me, maybe there's more criticism to be levied there than the side deal that didn't happen on the draft, because I don't think many teams really wanted to make those.
Back to the Leafs.
Yes.
The 2 UFAs that I'm looking at are probably the front runners to join the team: Nick Krejci and Andre Kasha. Do you see them as the guys who could play in Toronto next season? And if it's not either of those guys, who else do you see coming over?
Richie's an interesting one. Like, I heard that he was in the Leafs offices since free agency, like getting a tour or whatever, talking to the team. So obviously that would suggest there's some mutual interest there. The one thing I wonder about is, can they afford him? Like, I don't know that the Leafs are in his price bracket. And so perhaps part of what they have to do to get him to sign with the Leafs is to maybe take a little bit less than he could get elsewhere, and maybe sell him on the opportunity, on development chances, on where they're going, on the opportunity to win a cup, all that stuff. I think that this has been a challenge for them so far, right? Like, they would have liked to bring back Nick Foligno, but not at $3.8 million that he got in Boston. I think that they liked Granlund, certainly not at $5 million that Nashville signed him to on a long-term deal. And so I think the Leafs truly are bargain hunting right now. And, I haven't heard specific interest in Kasha, but he makes sense. Richie, it does seem like there's certainly some ongoing conversations there. I think Thomas Tatar is someone that's a possibility for Toronto as well. And, he kind of aligns with what we think of their team. Excellent underlying numbers, has been quite productive, relatively speaking, on that line with Gallagher and Deneau for a couple seasons now in Montreal. And, probably after being scratched through most of the playoffs, isn't in a position to demand too much in free agency. So I think those guys all make sense. But, my understanding too is they're quite open to trades if they don't end up landing any of these guys. And so, I think the Leafs will probably add 2 forwards to their group still. One that we can identify as probably being a top 6 type of role player, someone who might get a chance to play with Matthews and Marner.
Is that like a Tyler Bertuzzi, which is a name that's come up?
Could be Tyler Bertuzzi. Wouldn't surprise to see me move. Wouldn't surprise me if he's moved on from Detroit. He's a restricted free agent, so he needs a contract. I think that's a possibility. Like, I don't get the sense they're focused in on one guy, I guess is the point. I think that they're open-minded about who this is, because really they're focused in on a certain cap number. I think it's about $3 million, give or take, is roughly what they have to spend on another winger. Again, it's someone that we're talking could be played with Matthews and Marner next year, or Tavares and Nylander, depending on how things shake out. Maybe there's a chance to circle back and bring back an Alex Galchenyuk. I think whoever this player is, it's probably not going to make a massive headline. Like, we're not talking guaranteed superstar, someone that gets everyone running to the store to buy their jersey. But this is where you can make smart decisions. No one was doing cartwheels in Tampa when they gave up a 1st-round pick for Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman within like a week of each other. And then they end up forming 2/3 of one of their most effective lines over 2 cup runs. So I think what the Leafs are trying to do is identify the next Goodrow and Coleman. They can't sign those players once they've established themselves because of where their market is. And so I think they're trying to find the players that are about to pop. And Nick Krejci makes sense to me. I think he's a top 10 pick. He hasn't quite delivered maybe on the promise that accompanied him in his draft year, but I still think he brings a lot of good attributes that put in the right situation. His best years could still be ahead.
There was definitely part of me when I saw the Goodrow and Coleman deals where I was like, oh, Columbus broke their brains. Like, they fried them permanently, and then they ended up winning and they went through them in the process. So this is obviously been a ridiculous offseason, perhaps the most ridiculous offseason of your career, definitely of mine. When's the aftershock? Because there's a lot left. When's the aftershock? Is it going to be steady activity, do you think? Or is there going to be a day where the dam breaks?
Oh, I think it's going to be quiet for most guys now. I mean, maybe today you might see a little bit more action, but I could see it being very quiet through August for these players. I mean, that's a tough thing. Like, if you're a free agent who isn't Dougie Hamilton, like Dougie was going to be able to sign kind of on his terms more or less. But if you're in the middle or to lower tier free agency, like if you don't get a dance partner on day 1 or 2, like it could be a long August of, ramping up your workouts, not knowing what you're even working out for, like who you're working out to play for. And so I think September will get busy again, but I'm predicting a pretty quiet August. I mean, there's arbitration and stuff that still happens. Like, there's going to be league news, but I don't see it being a fertile period for free agents. I think, after this kind of first, this was a real frenzy, right? July 28th and to a much lesser degree, July 29th, that's a real frenzy. I'm thinking by August it gets quiet, and then September there's PTOs and there'll be some other stuff. But, it wouldn't be too comfortable right now if you don't have a contract.
Guys, this summer's been crazy. Concerts are back, major championships back, baseball, Euros, and of course the games. Bronze, silver, gold. You can't get a gold medal if you don't treat yourself like a gold medal. If an athlete treats their body like royalty, why can't you treat your area like it needs to be cleaned up and perfected? Do you know what I'm saying? What I'm saying is you need the new performance package from Manscaped for below-the-waist grooming. Now, as the world starts to open up, you need to clean up. And this is amazing. If you use the code DANGLE, manscaped.com, not only you get 20% off and free shipping, but you also get something like this, the Weed Whacker. Now, the Weed Whacker is for outside of this area and more for this area. We're talking about your ears and your nose, because you can't be going on dates and out to public functions and meeting people's parents with nose hairs hanging out of your nose, right? So that's what you need to do. Now, go to manscaped.com, use that code DANGLE, 20% off and free shipping with the code DANGLE at manscaped.com. Achieve glory. Achieve a gold medal for that area. Clean it up. Sports are about more than stats and scores. They're about people and stories. The Lead is a daily sports podcast from Wondery and The Athletic that dives into the biggest sports stories of the day, as told by one of The Athletic's reporters who is covering that story up close. The next few weeks, The Lead is turning its attention for the race for gold in Japan. They'll be covering stories like the 17-year-old who broke a Usain Bolt record, and at the games, who is and isn't a woman, what life is like as a trans athlete. Every day, The Lead goes beyond last night's scores to bring you the most interesting stories that take place at the intersection of sports and culture, all in about 15 minutes. It's one of the most important podcasts and one of the great storytelling podcasts that you can find, especially for sports. So check out The Lead where you get your podcasts, or subscribe to theathletic.com.
Sorry, I was too indirect. Let me be more direct. Announce the Eichel trade. Announce it. 1, 2, 3, announce it.
September 19th.
That's not tomorrow. What?
I know,
man.
I think the next pressure point is training camp. And I mean, in this case, I guess the unknown here, quite honestly, is we don't know if Jack Eichel could participate in training camp no matter where it is at this point. Like, we don't know where his neck health is at, if he's going to be able to do that. But I would think if he is, assuming he's able to participate in training camp, I don't think Buffalo wants any part of the scene of day one of camp with Jack Eichel returning. Like
Duchesne in Colorado.
That's exactly where I was going.
Right. And like Duchesne didn't get traded till the start of November. Maybe everyone is going to have to go through that. But, once they got through the first round of the draft, that trade got harder to make. Like, it was easier to make if you were getting the 5th overall pick that night, plus. But once you get past the draft, first of all, teams have started spending money elsewhere. Like, Minnesota has basically backed out of this thing because they had to get on with building their team. And it's a pretty big deal if you're adding $10 million in the 1C spot or not, in terms of what kind of fallout there is there. Like, they're not signing both Kaprizov and Kevin Fiala, who are both restricted free agents. If you're adding $10 million there, in fact, you might be trading one or both of them as part of the package. Anyway,
One or both.
Well, I don't know what this. That's the thing. The asks have been massive, as they should be. Right. I don't know what the truth is. Like, I don't know who's actually going to step up and meet this this equivalent of 4 first-rounders sort of idea that's out there. I think Anaheim has interest, but like, I don't think they're all that. Well, in fact, I know they're not all that excited about the prospect of dealing away like Jamie Drysdale or Trevor Zegras, like two of their top 2 young prospects who are on the cusp now of being full-time NHL players. Like, anyway, it's a long way of saying I think Buffalo's going to get squeezed a little bit, even though they hold, every Kevin Adams availability, I hear him saying like, we control this and all that. And it's right. They control the player and they have the most attractive player that's going to be moved in whatever trade is made. But at a certain point, it doesn't benefit the organization to have this drag on. And I think other teams are counting on the fact the price is going to come down.
So I read a tweet last night and I want to get your thoughts from Bill to Spiel. Adams, as in Kevin Adams, is forcing Eichel's camp to make an official trade request so he can take the shitty package that he was going to get anyway, but take a bit of the onus off the team's mishandling of the situation. It's actually a little smart. Thoughts? Knowing that shitty package is not Chris Johnston's words. Yeah, I mean,
I don't think this is Kevin Adams' fault. Like he
no.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, he became GM and this situation had been bubbling and whatever. I think he's in a no-win position though. And so I guess how you frame it, you're trying to get a small PR win out of this, but this is not going to, there's no way to win this trade. I don't think. I mean, the only way you ever win this trade is if Jack Eichel, and I'm not cheering for this, I'm not manifesting it, but like if he's so injured that he can never be a version of himself again. But assuming that he gets back to being the player that he's shown himself to be, like, you're not winning this deal. There's no, history is just full of these. We trade you a bunch of guys, but you get the superstar, and the superstar always is the guy you miss. But I also think you traded Ristolainen, you've traded Sam Reinhart. You lean into your rebuild here and just make the best deal possible. I wouldn't be worried, like, easy for me to say, I wouldn't be worried about PR. I would just be like, just make the deal and take your bullets and even be honest with the fans. Like, I think fans are way smarter than we give them credit for half the time, honestly. Like, I think people get it. Like, if you're a Sabres fan, you probably hate this, but you get it. Like, you're not bringing this guy back. Like, he's not going to play 3 more seasons in Buffalo. Like, there's just no chance. Like, he might have to play 3 more games because this might drag on and be a soap opera. But I kind of feel like we're getting to the stage where it's just best to make the best deal and move on and start building, because there's this building's on fire and we don't have enough fire engines to put it out.
Jesus.
Bad reference. I don't know. I was trying to think like it's beyond salvation, right?
It's like, beyond repair. No, yeah. I got it. It's drove the message home, CJ. I got it.
This marriage has gone through therapy and the couple still doesn't like each other. Like, there's just like, at some point you're calling a divorce lawyer. Like, let's get on with it.
What are you in Adam's DMs?
Whoa.
What are you in Adam's DMs? What are you, an Oilers fan?
I didn't know divorce jokes were safe here.
They are. Well, you heard the Duncan Keith one, right?
I don't think you did.
I don't know if you did. Oh yeah. There was. Anyway, it's Chris. I'll send you the link later. I think at the end of the day here, it's just for the Sabres is like, could the PR really get any worse? Just do it. And I think what's a bummer for Sabres fans is now they get to sit through the entire summer with it.
Well, do you know what fans want? They want a winning team or a plan. Like, they want to see that you either have to be like winning a championship or on the way to winning a championship. Like that's the only 2 things that fans will take. And that's why I'm saying I like Arizona's thing. Like, yeah, that team is going to lose a lot of games this year. But if you're in their fan base, you're like, wow, okay, we got a GM. He's being decisive. He's doing things that can give me a reason to care again. Mm-hmm. And so I think that Buffalo, there's no, like, Jack Eichel was supposed to be their captain when they won a cup, right? It was this build was supposed to be around him. It hasn't worked out. It failed him. He's failed. I don't even know if he's failed them, honestly. I mean, unfortunately, his health failed him here the last little bit. But like, I just think you got to move on. I'm with you. I don't think there's anything to be gained by dragging this out.
Vlad Tarasenko, his according to Jeremy Rutherford of The Athletic, his value is sinking like a rock too, because again, after the draft and after free agency, nobody's got the money anymore. And even at 50% retained, this is a guy that's played 30 games in the last 2 seasons and has shoulder issues and is known for his shot, and he's 30. Where does he end up? And when?
I see that trade's coming sooner. I could see him ending up with the Islanders, maybe New Jersey. Like New Jersey is looking for a scorer, so if they're not able to find it there, like where do they go? Maybe Carolina. Wouldn't rule it out. I'm not saying it's likely. The Hurricanes sort of kick tires on everybody, but I do think that that's another relationship beyond repair. The beauty for him is, he makes $7.5 million, but it's only this season that's coming and the next. So it's a little bit less risk. You're not counting on 6 more years of him and him finding his way back. And so I think all those places make sense. I mean, the Islanders are hilarious, right? Like we fully expect that they've signed Zach Parise and Kyle Palmieri in free agency. As of this moment, they haven't announced it for whatever reason.
They just never will. They just never will.
They'll just show up.
August 31st, there'll just be like a one-line press release that we signed this guy, and we traded for Tarasenko or whatever. It's actually like it doesn't offend me. I just find it funny or amusing.
Sure.
You just think it's funny how, huh?
Well, I mean, like whatever. They could you do you, man. Like it's 2021. We just been through a pandemic. We all got to live our best life. So whatever you think is the best way to approach it. But anyway, I do think Tarasenko we move. I just saw, by the way, that David Krejci, I mentioned him earlier, that he's announced he's retiring from the NHL.
Oh, wow.
So he's moving home to the Czech Republic to play. And, the story I had been told there is that his parents don't speak English and his kids don't speak Czech. Essentially he's raised kids in Boston, in North America, and his parents, lived in the Czech Republic. And I think he has a desire to reunite his family, so to speak, or like to after all this time move on. I think it's a big blow for the Bruins. I like what the Bruins did in free agency, but there's still a sizable kind of hole in their second line center position. Like maybe it's Eric Halla that's stepping into that role is signed. I mean, maybe they try Nick Foligno there. Obviously he can play all 3 forward positions and has done so throughout his career. But like Krejci and Hall were a key part of their second line, late last season. And even at Krejci's age, I still think he was effective. And so I'm sure emotional decision for David, probably the right one for his family. But, this leaves the Bruins to me in an interesting spot. Like the decline might come sooner than we think with that team. That's all I'm saying. That's not a full prediction. I just see them as a team that's been so good for so long. You just assume they'll never fall off. But, it's death by 1,000 small cuts, might be coming to that organization.
God, wow. His playoff numbers are in all 3 trips to the finals that he was a part of, 23 points in 25 games, 26 points in 22 games, and 16 points in 24 games in the most recent one. 0.79 points per game in the playoffs. Like what a playoff performer David Krejci was. As a Leaf fan, good riddance.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Guy. Yeah. Super guy too. Like
Super
really,
guy.
Really good guy.
CJ?
I mean, I admire making this decision for his family too. Like, can't be easy. Like I haven't talked to him. I'm not in the shoes, but like I can just imagine that wasn't the easiest call, because when you're one of the best in the world at doing something like that, you can only do it for so long. And to leave when he still could play, man, that's got to be tough.
Would he play in the KHL or the
sure.
Czech League?
Maybe the Czech League. Him and Jaromir Jagr can
tear it up.
Their battles there. Well, I don't think they'd be on the same team. So. That's wild because they played on that one cup run. Jagr was with Boston too. So
that's right.
Yeah, I mean, good on them, but the Czech League is great and all, but it's not the NHL.
Right.
Has there been a change in mindset just based on the conversations that you have? Because this is like, I know it's valiant and everything, but I also don't think this is a decision that gets made pre-pandemic at the same age, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? I think everyone has a new perspective on life after all this.
Yeah. If you didn't, you did the pandemic wrong. Like, and
yeah.
I'm saying that obviously tongue in cheek, but like, let's face it, who among us hasn't had either an opportunity to consider, like just reevaluate our priorities, look at situations friends, family, work, whatever, differently. I mean, I think the whole world, like, this has been an earthquake that shook every country, touched everyone in certain ways. And so I agree with you. It's hard to alternate reality we can't do in this case, but I think it's possible that everyone has looked differently. I know I've looked at things in my own life quite differently too through this. And so I think that's fair assessment. Even Matt Niskanen, right? Like, he walked away after the bubble with Philly from, I think it was around $4 million. Like, he just said, I'm done. He didn't want to do it anymore, move his family back to Minnesota. And he was younger and still could play. And so I think there are a lot of guys. I mean, it's funny, it's gone the other way with some of the older players. Like, I've heard a few older players kind of suggest they didn't want to go out with these seasons. Like, they want to stick it through long enough to see fans again and to be around the excitement and the way the game was that they remember. So, like, it doesn't mean that it's driving players en masse out of the game, but I do think it's driving maybe different decisions that would have been made if it didn't happen. And, I've even read also that, like, 25 companies are expecting they're going to lose 25% of their workforce because of this. Like, every company, no matter what, you're going to have part of your workforce that absolutely wants to keep working from home. You have part of it that absolutely wants to come back to office. Part of it that, like, wants some hybrid. Like, there's no way to make everyone happy in this. And this is going to be probably the most significant event in our lives, honestly. Like, in our that we'll witness. Yeah, well, if something,
fingers crossed.
If something bigger and more disruptive is coming, we're probably not doing a hockey podcast. So
I've had it with significant moments. I would like to go back to, wow, this is pretty boring. I love it.
Man. You want to keep your life comfortably between a 3 and 7 out of 10, kind of?
Yeah, right now I do. Yeah. I mean, like, you were talking about changes and you brought up divorce. I mean, I did pandemic and divorce at the same time. It was spectacular. So, for me, I feel like we could ratchet the drama down a little bit. You know what I mean? I see. Yeah. Like, I mean, and with no, I'm not making any sort of side shot at my daughter's mother. It's just like, it was a lot. There's a lot. And it feels like everybody seems just pooped. Like, everybody I talk to, they're like, I'm just really tired of everything. Like, and
it's not a side shot. It's not a side shot, but you are saying my daughter's mother. Like,
well, yeah, like, I mean, that's what she is. What do you want me to say? My ex? It sounds so much worse when you say your ex, right? It's like, oh,
really? I just think back to, like, if your parents are fighting and your mom's like, well, your father, tell your father this. Or, like, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, he's not my father. He's your husband. Like, what the heck? Like, why are you changing the... Anyway.
Yeah. I'm just trying to be positive about it, right? Like, it's not that big of a deal. We're fine. It's anyway.
I saw that you got a new bow you've been talking about on Instagram. So.
Yes. Yes. Did you see that?
Yes. You've been going public with your feelings.
That wasn't my choice. You know what? It's funny. There is some crossover between this podcast and Virgin Radio, but a lot of times it's just completely separate audiences. And so, I'll bring up, I've talked about it openly on Virgin, and then I'll bring it up here and people be like, I didn't know that. And it's because it's like a hockey podcast, right? It's the only place you'd know me from. So, we're not talking about it that much. But yeah, anyway, long story short.
I'm just happy that you're happy, bud.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I love the half dozen people in your Instagram comments, because it'll be a lot of listeners of this show going, what? And there's a half dozen people that just go, all right, I got the tea. And they explain everything because they listen to both.
Yeah.
Listen, I got you. Here's what's going down.
Love the hardcore. It's funny, every time I post anything now, and I know by saying this, I'm going to get, like, our listeners are very, very funny. So I know, so there's basically there's 3 groups of people that follow me. They're the people that were, Virgin Radio listeners, the people that SDP listeners. And then there are the breakfast television / really like my mom's show. And so therefore will pay attention to what I'm doing as well, but they really don't consume any of the shows that I do. And
what's your mom show?
So what they'll do is, like, if I talk about anything relationship wise, they'll just write divorce ? Just divorce? What happened? and then so now I know I'm going to get 40,000 people every time I post something writing divorce on my comments.
Oh no.
SDP listeners have started picking it up, and I know who you are, by the way. And they absolutely know what's going on, and they just write divorce just to fuck around. And so
do you know what I'm going to do now? It's going to be the dead of August. I'm going to be somewhere totally off the grid, You will not have heard from me, and you're gonna have like one of your like cheesy car commercials or whatever on Instagram, and I'm just gonna write divorce.
You know what, Chris? You know what? I respect it. I respect that.
Sorry. That's a sign of love, though. It's a sign of love.
I know. Listen, I know that. Chris wouldn't make fun of you. He's far too polite unless he really knew you and really liked you.
Yeah, you're going to be on a boat somewhere telling me this is Ontario. You're going to be like,
hey, that campaign's not done yet. Don't go back yet. Thank you.
Oh my God, I'm crying.
Oh, God.
We selling some peanut butter? Divorce?
All right, Chris. All right.
Oh shit.
So listen, Chris, we love having you
this
as
was
always.
More goofy than informative.
That's okay. That's okay. So listen, it's been a wild 8 months, 9 months almost.
Can we call this episode divorce?
Yeah. Question mark?
Question mark. Yeah.
Question mark. Or is that too real?
Oh, that'd be funny. Let's do it. I think it's a good idea. Let's do it. Divorce? Question mark with CJ. You know what?
No,
listen.
then everyone's gonna think I'm getting divorced. Like,
Well, they'll still listen. Yeah. So listen. You know what? Really, Chris, we love you. Take that well-deserved break. We can't wait to have you on again in like 8 weeks when we're teeing up the season. But thank you for everything this year with us and sticking with us through the pandemic as well, because you've been a great resource and spectacular every time you're coming on for people that listen to this show. It's I find myself when you're here, I listen to the show and it's really nice.
Wow, I can't ever listen to myself on anything. I only hate when I'm on the show because then I can't listen to the show. So.
Right.
There was a moment early in the podcast where there was an awkward pause and it was like, right, I'm on the Steve Dangle podcast. Okay.
That's what I mean. Even live and in the moment, I'm listening like, oh, that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of,
I can't wait to see what the next question is. I bet it's going to be really good.
Well, thanks to you guys. Obviously, you guys are my buds and I love you, but also I love your audience. Like, it's part of what's made this so much fun the last few years for me is getting to be on your show. Like, people are all in my everything telling me how much they love this thing. So it's cool to get feedback like that. Honestly, almost nothing else I do you hear positive things from, because we don't live in an era where people go around saying, hey, you did a good job. But I get so much positive vibes out of doing this podcast, and that's kept me coming back in addition to you guys.
It's a special group. It really is. So Chris, thank you for your time. You're from a special guy. We can't wait to catch up again. Maybe we'll get out for a beer at some point in August and not post about it on social media. Hence the divorce comments.
Divorce?
But
the peanut butter line. Holy shit, Chris. Oh, I'm still crying. Oh my God.
I'm never going to be able to sell anything again, Chris.
I don't know. It looks to me like you're doing a pretty good job, man. I buy everything that you post on there.
Listen, we love you, buddy. Thanks so much for the show, and everybody enjoy their long weekends. We will be back next Wednesday with Rick Westhead to talk about the Chicago Blackhawks. Definitely going to be a tough episode, but definitely going to be worth the listen. Chris, you're amazing. We love you. Thank you.
No problem. I just thought of one thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's all over me about that mystery player. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. It's not happening. Didn't happen.
Not happening. Didn't happen. Okay.
Could it happen?
Maybe next year, but anyway, I wasn't making it up. I think everyone thought I was just doing that to be extra dramatic and make everyone crazy. But no, it just didn't happen. Sorry, guys.
Okay. It's all right.
Why don't you run the Leafs?
Because I would be a disaster. I would be so bad.
All right, sorry. Next question. What's your problem?
Thanks so much, Chris. We'll wrap
All
it
right, guys. See you well.
The Steve Dangle Podcast. Follow the guys on Twitter at Steve_Dangle, at AdamWYLDE, and at Jesse Blake. Connection complete.